Thanks, Tom, and thank you for that ovation. I said to Jeff as he sat down that I might just get up and say one word, ditto. But I am a politician. I'll try not to cover, seriously, Jeff's articulated my thoughts about being a politician pretty well then. And I think it'd be a great parliament and a great system of governance if we could just basically all tell the truth. I'll try not to cover the same ground that the other speakers have been over, but I'd like to start with a quote. Some of you have heard me say this before, and it goes like this. On some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? And vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must do it because conscience tells him it is right. Ladies and gentlemen, they're the words of Martin Luther King, and the words that I've used many times over a long number of years in a lot of speeches that I've done, especially in talking to young students about governance. But they're also words that mean a lot more to me because they're words that I refer to whenever I'm faced with a really difficult decision to make. And so it was that they were the words that I used to end a speech on the 30th of March last year to the Legislative Council when I made the decision to vote against the government on the Pulp Mill approval process. I think most of you can imagine that making the decision to become a rat is not a decision one takes very lightly. But people who know me would know that it was a decision I was always going to make on an issue that I felt so strongly about, and one that I'd not had the opportunity to participate in within the party system. But by doing that, by voting with my conscience, it effectively ended my career in the Parliamentary Labor Party, because the very next day the Premier announced that I was out. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my belief that if every politician, when confronted with a difficult decision, if they just left the final decision up to their conscience to ask the question, is it right? Then we would not need to be here today. None of us would be in this hall today. There'd be no need for a public meeting on this subject. There'd be no need for an organisation like Tasmanians for Healthy Democracy. There'd be no need for us to be here discussing things like ICACs or ethics commissions. There'd be no need for whistleblowers. But sadly, I think it would appear that we don't live in this type of utopia. Rightly or wrongly, since I crossed the floor on the 30th of March last year, I've had interactions with literally thousands of Tasmanians. And wherever I go, people come up to me in the streets, the emails, the phone calls, and so on. The fact is that there is this perception that there is something very wrong with the culture of government in the state and the governance process. And the bottom line is, I don't think anyone of us know what's right and what's wrong in a lot of these issues because questions remain unanswered. But the fact is, the perception is there, and in the eyes of people, perception is reality. I'd like to just look at as a bit of a case study to illustrate the point. The careers of three politicians from the Labor Party: Green, Cons and Martin. Brian Green resigned as Minister and as Deputy Premier because he's facing criminal charges. 2 court hearings, no result, hasn't been found guilty, hasn't been found innocent. Personally, I don't give a damn about the legality or otherwise of what he did. To me, that's almost insignificant, because to me, the key question for a politician is this. When he signed that agreement the day before the state election was called to give a monopoly agreement to the TCC, was he acting morally, rightly? Was he acting ethically? And I've made a judgment on that in my mind. And every one of us need to judge his activities in that way. Steve Collins, that's already been talked about today. He resigned as Minister, resigned as Deputy Premier, because he did what I think is one of the worst things you can do in democracy. He was caught out lying to Parliament. I don't think you can do anything worse than that as a politician. And then you come to Martin. What did I do? I actually voted in Parliament on an issue I felt very strongly about, because I asked my conscience, is it right? And my conscience said no. So I voted in accordance with my conscience. Now the interesting thing is only one of those three Labor politicians were thrown out of the Parliamentary Labor Party.